3 movies released on 3 different streaming platforms: Apple Plus, Amazon Prime, and Netflix. Let's talk about them. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. 3 mini reviews in one giant review video. Today we are talking Blow the Man Down, The Banker, and Ultras, all 3 movies on 3 different platforms. So if you guys want a new movie to watch this weekend, there were plenty of things that dropped. We've already talked about the platform on Netflix. We did that yesterday, and today I'm going to squeeze these into one vid, so please let me know down below which movie out of these 3 is your favorite. If you have not seen any of them yet, which one are you looking forward to the most? And if you like these kinds of videos, they're very different from what I normally do, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. But first, blow the man down. So while grieving for the loss of their mother, the Connolly sisters suddenly find that they have a crime to cover up, leading them deep into the underbelly of their salty Maine fishing village. So a lot of familiar faces in this movie and a lot of actors and actresses that really know what they're doing. And you can tell that from the opening scene and really the opening few sequences. It is a very well acted and honestly well-directed film. I believe this is the debut feature by Danielle Cruddy and Bridget Savage Cole. You can tell I didn't know who they were because I had to look up the names, but they did a solid job, and they really established a tone and an atmosphere at the beginning that stayed consistent throughout the entire film, and it almost has the intrigue of a Coen Brothers Fargo, right? That's how you're feeling this uncertainty of what is going to happen next, the unsettling nature of what these old women are doing in this town, and it's really the uncovering of that. It's the process of finding out how bad things can really get with the most innocent looking and the most innocent sounding people. And as we meet new characters along the way, some more familiar faces, we're introduced more and more into what is actually going on. But throughout that entire journey, we're with these 2 girls as they're trying to cover up what they did. So there are really a couple of distinct storylines going on here. And I made the comparison to Fargo earlier because it really does feel like that. At times, the issue with this movie is the fact that I just wasn't really satisfied with the development of the characters. I like the dialogue. I didn't mind the script at all, and I think the screenplay overall works really well. But Blow the Man Down didn't get as interesting as I feel like it thought it was getting, if that makes sense. It's a movie that tries to keep you on your toes. It's a movie that tries to leave you at the end of the day with a bunch of intrigue. It's like, oh, what was actually going down? But the ending itself was so unsatisfying for me. You look at a movie that came out yesterday in The Platform. A lot of people have issues about that ending. But for me, the journey was so satisfying, the lack of an ending didn't bother me as much. But with a movie like this, the journey didn't quite get there. It didn't quite affect me in the way that it wanted to. And this isn't me saying, oh, it's not a very well-acted movie and there were a lot of flaws within the script and the dialogue. No, the script in itself is solid, but it's just the story. I'm like, oh, they're running a really bad thing in the midst of this town that seems like a nice, sweet fishing town on the outside, but on the inside, and the way that we explore that is really solid. It's just, I wanted it to be a bit more at the end of the day. So I feel like a lot of people are going to love this movie. I think it has like 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm definitely lower than many other people. But I'm going a 60% for Blow the Man Down. It is full of great acting. It's full of great characterizations. It's just, I needed more at the end of the day. And I wanted more from the ending. Next up is the Netflix Italian film called Ultras. So a story of intergenerational friendship and coming of age set in the world of Ultras culture during the last 5 weeks of a soccer championship. So this film follows a guy who has lived a life full of violence and protest and passion and values that seemed up until this point completely unshakable. While that is happening, we're also following the stories of a couple of other younger individuals who are just now getting involved with a group of people who have a tendency to cause a bit of chaos. And the movie is actually following the following of this football team. And an issue that I had is the fact that we didn't see a lot of that. We didn't see a lot of the reason why. Well, we know the reason why, but we didn't see it play out on screen. We just get kind of the ins and outs of those who are involved in the background of this situation. And I get it, budgetary restrictions and the fact that you can't really film something like that on a large scale. But what this is, it's really exploring a very unconventional friendship between an older generation and a younger generation, and two guys who just, it doesn't feel like they fit together because they live such different lives. And one man who has been there, he's done that, and he's trying to prevent the younger guy from doing the exact same thing. Now, I actually like how they went about exploring that dynamic. And I like the showcase of the different aspects of their lives. But Ultras is a movie that falls flat when it comes to delivering on a cohesive film that fleshes things out like one would expect with subject matter like this. Now, certain moments and situations do seem extremely heightened. The way that they interact with women in particularly. Now, that may be how they go about doing things, but it seems to me like a lot of these elements were thrown in just to make them feel cinematic, whereas the other half of the movie felt very real and very intimate and very tragic. I love the way that this film plays out. I really like the filmmaking when it comes to groups of people rushing towards each other. There's one moment at the end when they're literally running towards the police, and that looked spectacular, the way that it was filmed, the way that it was put together. The score, an electronic score that kicks in every now and then, it was really cool. And I liked moments, the subtle moments between the characters, and the fact that some of these characters who don't at the beginning feel like real people, real individuals, because of the situations that they get themselves in, they have those subtle moments, and they let those play out on screen. Now, some of the interactions, if you're young, they're a bit graphic, and it gets a little bit intimate at times, something that I wasn't necessarily expecting, and I think they went a bit far with that, and they went a bit far with a lot of elements from this film, but first-time filmmaker did what they had to do to make this at least entertaining. It didn't quite get there for me, but it was entertaining. Some filmmaking aspects that worked really well for me. So Ultras is a film that I would say if you're interested in this kind of subject matter, check it out. If not, maybe worth a skip. And obviously, 56% for Ultras. It's a movie that is on Netflix right now. And the final film we're talking about is The Banker, directed by George Nolfi. So in the 1960s, two entrepreneurs hatch an ingenious business plan to fight for housing integration and equal access to the American dream. Now, I know y'all will recognize people in this movie. This stars Nicholas Hoult, Anthony Mackie, Samuel L. Jackson, and it's a film that drops on Apple Plus. Now, if you don't have access to Apple Plus, you're not going to be watching this movie. But I would say, just to start things off here, I would say this is a solid movie showcasing, getting the point across, exactly what they're trying to get across, but not doing it in a way that is, it feels shoehorned, it feels like, we want the audience. No, we're telling a true story here, and the way that we tell it is very subtle, and I think a lot of that starts with Anthony Mackie's character in Bernard. Bernard is a guy who holds in almost every bit of his emotion up until certain moments in the movie, but he goes about his life in a way that feels so smooth. So, I know what I'm doing. I'm a lot smarter than pretty much everyone else around me, and I'm going to make money. And I'm not only going to make money, I'm going to be the first of my kind to do what I'm doing. And that's a pretty incredible story. Now, you may ask, Austin, is Anthony Mackie capable of giving a performance like that? Well, he hasn't necessarily given a phenomenal performance in a couple of years. He does what he does in the MCU, and he's great as Falcon, but it doesn't require the range that a character like this requires. This is probably the best performance I've seen from him in quite some time. And obviously, Samuel L. Jackson, he's going to do what he does. He's really good. Nicholas Hoult didn't quite hit what I wanted him to hit, but he's always solid within his films. The Banker tells a very inspiring story, but it also tells an inspiring story that doesn't, if you don't know the true story, doesn't take the turns that you may want as someone who's sitting back trying to feel, thank goodness. You know, they run into situations that even after the first act, things are going so well, what's going to happen, you don't expect them to run into. And the way that they flesh those out and the way that they play those out is interesting. Where this film falters for me is it doesn't go that extra mile. It doesn't give us that, whether it's an impactful scene, an impactful moment, phenomenal filmmaking. The filmmaking's fine. Really nothing stands out about the cinematography or the score. It's a very repetitive score. But it does what it's supposed to do. It tells this true story. It reminds me of so many other films that have come out over the last couple of years. But as long as you're telling the story, then it's going to work. And they told the story, and I think they have the benefit of having some really phenomenal actors giving great performances. So from that perspective, The Banker worked, and it's probably, out of these three, the best movie that I saw. I know others aren't going to feel that way, but I was more engaged and more intrigued with this story than I was with the other two. It still didn't hit the levels that I think it could have hit with something like this coming out on Apple Plus, telling this particular story, but it's a great story to tell. It has great performances in there. I'm going to go a 65% for The Banker. But that's it, guys. Those are three movies on streaming platforms: Netflix, Apple Plus, Amazon Prime. They're out right now. If you guys need something to watch this weekend, you can go check those out. Go check out my reviews for The Letter for the King, The Platform, possibly other things. If there's something else that dropped this weekend you'd like to see me cover, let me know down below. You guys are the best. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you soon.